So I've recently played Until Dawn on the PlayStation 4 and wanted to share my experience of the game here. It is one of those games that barely have any gameplay and are more like an interactive movie than an actual game. It's supposed to be something of a slasher movie where you play as a group of young people in a cabin on top of a mountain. They have to essentially survive the night and you are more or less in command of them. When it comes to the game's appearance, you will immediately notice that it looks really nice. I own a PlayStation 4 Pro and it ran smoothly throughout the whole game. The characters are actual actors who were hired, although I must say that the acting itself leaves a lot to be desired at times. The game's gameplay mostly revolves around you controlling a specific person for a while and making simple decisions, which at times have no effect and at others can lead to a character's death. One of the most aggressive mechanics in this game are the Quicktime Events. You get way too many of those, and some of them, while appearing to be at a crucial moment, seem to have no effect. This is a strange choice. There will be times when you're being chased and making a bunch of mistakes, which does nothing to the character. Essentially, you still get to the same point where you would be if you had made no mistakes, and then there would be one specific QuickTime event which will kill you every time, regardless if you have done everything perfectly before or not. In other words, most of the things you are doing are just a decoy action, while only a few specific ones are actually important. Other games do this better. David Cage games, for example, rely heavily on QTEs, but at least there, your failure is determined by how many times you fail, rather than on which exact spot it happens to be the case. Although there are exceptions to this there as well. I also dislike the fact that the game has several gacha traps where it seemingly puts you in a situation where an inconsequential choice is before your character, but it will lead to your character's death out of the blue. This sucks and is obviously there so that the player ends up losing a few characters during their first playthrough and is forced to replay the game with the new knowledge in order to get the better endings. I don't like this at all because it feels cheap. And speaking of cheap, the game really wants to scare you, so it will employ the cheapest tricks in the book: lame jump scares. The game uses fixed camera angles, which can at times even confuse the player. In one screen you are holding up the analog stick, and on the other camera screen where the angle has now shifted, you're still holding it up in order to move forward, but now your character is facing a different position, so pressing up on the analog stick actually makes your character turn around and go back on the previous screen. This kind of stuff can be confusing at times. Since the game feels and plays a lot like an interactive movie, I played it late at night in bed and switched the gamepad with my wife from time to time. This made the experience more fun because she's actually much easier to scare, and watching her comment with worry in her voice is entertaining to me. One of the biggest problems here is how the characters just don't act like real people in most situations. They constantly split up, and even if the story somehow reunites them, they then decide the best approach will be to split up again, even if this has cost a few lives last time they did it. They appear to have no self-preservation instincts either. A single young girl will hear something scary and her first instinct is to go towards the source of the sound and investigate. I mean, come on, I'm a man and I'd bail as soon as something like that happens, especially if you know that people are being killed around you. But it doesn't just end there. For some reason, nobody really tries to illuminate the areas they're in. For the most part, everyone walks around in the dark. When alone, they make loud noises as if to attract whoever wants to kill them. If a weapon is available, 9 out of 10 times that weapon will be discarded or not even picked up in the first place. Hell, if it was me, I'd break the leg of a chair if nothing else is available and walk with that as a baseball bat. These guys leave knives out in the open and they don't take them, where knives are perfectly usable weapons when it comes to self-defense in such a situation. The plot of the game is the main feature and will be the biggest reason for you to continue playing. Sadly, it's not very good. I know that slasher movies are not known for their masterfully crafted stories, but still. What is interesting, however, is that the game does present very different characters, some of which intentionally unlikable. In short, a bunch of horny people in their early to late 20s who are supposed to be teenagers get together in this log cabin with the intent to have a nice time. The first hour or so, nothing spectacular happens and we are introduced to the gang and their dramas. This one slept with that one and then with someone else, that kind of thing. I guess the introduction is entertaining enough. By that time you will surely have decided who needs to die and who gets to live simply by what characters they have, but for me it's never so easy. You see, I like to keep the assholes alive until the last moment because they usually tend to make the game more interesting and add a lot more drama to the whole story. The problem is that this often causes me to keep them alive for far too long and end up saving them just until the end. Since I don't want to spoil anything story related, I have to keep the story part short, so let's move on to something else. I did mention the quicktime events in this game. They're actually quite difficult, and one particular type seems to be especially unfair. From time to time, the game will ask of your character to hide and remain hidden. For you as the player, this means hold your gamepad, which is vibrating, without moving it. And while this happens early on in the game, it's easy enough, but by the end of the story, it gets so brutal that even when you're not really moving it, it seems to detect movements. I was forced to stop breathing in order to pass these sections. I literally stopped breathing because the movement of my chest and my tense arms being attached to that, obviously, I guess would slightly move or something. It had some kind of effect on the game. I changed the gamepads because I was thinking that maybe the gamepad's just detecting movement where there's none, but that was not the problem. So it gets really hard later on, and I do not like that. And before someone says, hey, what are you complaining about the game being hard? You suck. Well, while it might be true, I don't think that being good at standing still should be a quality that should be rewarded or punished at a game. That's just the position I'm taking here about it. I did mention that the game has several endings earlier, and if you want the good one, you have to keep finding and examining certain items which are not always very obvious. This is yet another reason for which the game will want you to replay it. You find these Indian artifacts, for example, which predict the future and potentially prepare you for what is to happen. They seem to address the player and break the fourth wall instead of addressing the characters. Although the characters are the one that actually find them, they never really say anything specific about them. Only by collecting all of these, however, and reading all the files will you be able to understand what truly is going on. Especially because these little artifacts actually will unlock a few seconds of a short video which explains a lot of the story. So you want to collect them in order to unlock the video and be able to watch it from beginning to end. Alternatively, you could just go on YouTube and watch that video so that you don't have to bother with pixel hunting, but that is your choice. At the end of the game, I did not feel like replaying it was something that I wanted to do. I mean, it would essentially be like replaying a Telltale game or Life is Strange, for example. Even with all those little changes you can do, the game to me was not worth replaying. To be honest, I don't feel like I got enough for a full-priced PlayStation game. It's not bad or too short, but it isn't that good either. It's curious and definitely interesting to play, but if you were to watch the whole game on YouTube, you'd still get about 70% of the experience for free. I know that's not a good argument for everyone, but frankly, there are simply better games of this kind out there for much less money available. Still, if you can get your hands on it for cheap, give it a shot, especially if you are someone who enjoyed games such as Heavy Rain or Beyond Two Souls. This is where I want to thank you for watching my review. I hope it was informative and entertaining. If you would like to support what I do, you could do so over at my Patreon page. There will be a link towards it in the description of this video. In any case, thank you for watching and have a great day.